Family is meant to be the one place where love and loyalty never falter. Yet sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones who wound us deepest. This story follows Grace Miller, a devoted mother who spent her life sacrificing everything for her children. From the outside, her family looks respectable: a hard-working son, a married daughter, and relatives who seem close-knit. But behind closed doors, greed, entitlement, and cold ingratitude poison every corner of her home. On her 65th birthday, Grace expected nothing more than a quiet evening and perhaps a phone call. Instead, she received a gift that would shake her world apart, not because of what it was, but because of the cruel message it carried. What began as disappointment soon unraveled into betrayal, lies, and the shattering of bonds she thought unbreakable. But Grace is not as powerless as they believe. With years of patience, sacrifice, and hidden strength, she carries a secret of her own, one that, when revealed, will turn the tables and force her family to face the truth about love, respect, and what it really means to belong. Grace Miller woke before dawn, as she always had. At 65, her bones ached when she moved, but habit pulled her out of bed before the sun rose. She padded into the small kitchen, set the kettle on the stove, and glanced at the calendar on the wall. Her birthday. There were no balloons, no cards on the table, just the same chipped mug waiting for her tea. She smiled faintly to herself. No need to be silly, Grace. You've lived long enough to know birthdays are for the young. Still, she hoped, by mid-morning, she had swept the porch, tended the garden, and folded the laundry that wasn't hers but her daughter's, left behind in baskets weeks ago. Grace lived in the old farmhouse her husband had left when he passed away 5 years earlier. Her son Daniel visited often, usually to ask for money. Her daughter Chloe lived nearby with her husband, but rarely stopped in unless she needed help watching the children. The house was always full of needs, but rarely of thanks. That afternoon, a knock came at the door. Grace hurried to answer, her heart fluttering. Maybe Daniel, maybe Chloe, maybe someone remembered. It was the mailman, holding a medium-sized package. "Special delivery for Mrs. Grace Miller," he said cheerfully. Grace signed quickly, her fingers trembling. A package, on her birthday. She carried it inside, setting it gently on the table. The wrapping was neat, the ribbon gold. A small card was tucked under the bow. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a beautifully wrapped bottle, an expensive brand of wine. Grace froze. Wine. Her children knew she didn't drink. She hadn't touched alcohol in years, not since the doctor warned her it could interfere with her medication. She picked up the card, hope still flickering in her chest. Maybe it was from a friend, a neighbor who hadn't known. But the handwriting stopped her cold. "Happy birthday, Mom. Thought you could use a little celebration. Daniel and Chloe." Grace sat heavily in the chair, the card slipping from her fingers. A little celebration. A bottle of wine she could never touch. Her children had sent her a gift that wasn't meant for her at all. Later that evening, Chloe called. "Mom, did you get the package?" Grace swallowed hard. "Yes, dear. I got it." "Good," Chloe said briskly. "Daniel and I thought it would be nice. It's expensive, you know. You should feel lucky." Grace hesitated. "It's lovely, Chloe, but you know I don't drink." There was silence on the line, then a sharp laugh. "Oh, Mom, don't be dramatic. You can put it on display, or give it to a guest sometime. We spent good money on that bottle, so don't start complaining." Grace's chest tightened. "I wasn't complaining, just wondering." "Well, don't," Chloe snapped. "Honestly, you're never satisfied." Daniel said the same thing. "You always want something else. You should be grateful." The line went dead before Grace could reply. She sat in silence, the unopened bottle gleaming on the table beside her. Later that night, Daniel stopped by. He walked in without knocking, as usual, tossing his jacket over the chair. "So, Mom," he said with a grin, "did you like the gift?" Grace forced a smile. "It was generous." Daniel chuckled. Generous is right. That bottle cost me a week's pay. Not that you'll appreciate it. Grace folded her hands in her lap. You know, I can't drink, Daniel. His smile faded. There it is. Always a problem. Always an excuse. Do you know how hard I work? And you can't even say thank you without finding fault? Grace's throat tightened. I am thankful. Truly. It's not something I can use. Daniel stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket. You know what, Mom? Forget it. Next time I won't bother. Maybe that'll make you happy. He stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Grace sat alone in the quiet, the bottle gleaming in the moonlight. Her birthday had come and gone. Not with joy, but with the sting of words sharper than knives. And yet, deep inside, a flicker of resolve burned. Her children thought her powerless, a fragile old woman clinging to memories. But Grace carried more strength and more secrets than they knew. The morning after her birthday, Grace stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing the teacup she always used. The bottle of wine still sat in the center of the table, unopened, catching the pale light of dawn. She stared at it for a long while before turning away. Her hands moved through the motions of her daily chores, but her mind wandered to the past. Years earlier, when her children were still small, the house had been alive with laughter and chaos. Grace remembered working double shifts at the diner, coming home past midnight, then rising again before dawn to cook breakfast, pack lunches, and get the kids to school. Daniel had always been headstrong. As a boy, he demanded the newest toys, the best shoes. Grace saved every tip, every spare dollar, so he wouldn't feel less than the other boys. When his shoes tore in high school, she patched her own dress shoes with tape and glue so she could buy him a new pair. Chloe had been quieter, more delicate. Grace made her costumes for school plays out of old curtains, stitching late into the night while Chloe slept. When Chloe cried over a broken bracelet, Grace pawned her wedding band to buy a new one, telling the girl it had always been meant for her. Every sacrifice, every compromise, Grace made with a smile. She believed that was what mothers did, give until nothing remained, so their children could walk taller. But somewhere along the way, gratitude had soured into entitlement. As adults, Daniel and Chloe came to her not with hugs or laughter, but with demands. Daniel wanted money for bills, for his car, for debts he never explained. Chloe wanted childcare, housework, and favors that stretched Grace thin. Rarely did they ask how she was. Rarely did they sit with her just to talk. And now, on her 65th birthday, they had given her a bottle of wine she couldn't drink, followed by accusations that she was ungrateful. Grace wiped the sink dry, her chest heavy. That afternoon, she took the bus into town. She stopped at the small cemetery by the church, carrying a bunch of fresh daisies. She knelt by the headstone of her late husband, Samuel Miller. The stone was simple, worn from rain and time, but it still stood firm. "Hello, Sam," Grace whispered, setting the flowers down. Another birthday come and gone. The children remembered, at least. But sometimes I wonder if they remember me, or just the things I can give them. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she brushed them away. You'd be disappointed, Sam. Not in them, no, I won't say that, but in how they treat me, in how little they see of what's been given. I try to keep the family together, but it feels like holding water in my hands. No matter what I do, it slips away. She sat there a long time, speaking softly to the grave, as though Samuel could still hear her. Before leaving, she added, almost in a whisper, I won't let them take everything, Sam. Not yet. I still have something they don't know about, and when the time is right, they'll learn. On her way back, Grace stopped at the market. Neighbors greeted her warmly, asking how she'd been. To them, she was still the kind, dependable widow who always had a smile. None of them knew how cold her own children had become behind closed doors. At the counter, the cashier slipped an extra loaf of bread into her bag. For you, Mrs. Miller. A little birthday gift. Grace's heart swelled. Thank you, dear. You've no idea how much that means. It struck her then sometimes strangers showed more kindness than her own flesh and blood. That evening, Chloe dropped by unexpectedly, her children in tow. She barely said hello before thrusting the kids toward Grace. Mom, I need you to watch them tomorrow. Michael and I have dinner with his boss. It's important. Grace hesitated. Chloe, I'm not feeling my best. Couldn't you ask a sitter? Chloe's expression hardened. A sitter? Mom, you're their grandmother. What else do you have to do all day? The words stung like a slap. Grace swallowed. Of course, dear. Bring them by. Chloe gave a curt nod. Good. I'll pick them up late. And Mom, don't give them too many sweets this time. Honestly, it's like you're trying to spoil them just to annoy me. She swept out as quickly as she'd come, leaving Grace standing in the doorway with two wide-eyed children clinging to her skirt. Grace forced a smile for them, but inside her chest, something cracked. That night, Grace wrote in her journal, the only place she let her truest thoughts live. They think I am weak. They think I have nothing left but my patience. But I still have strength. I still have secrets. One day, when they push too far, they'll see that I am not as powerless as they believe. She closed the book, tucking it into the drawer beside her bed. The house was quiet again, save for the ticking of the clock and the faint creak of the old floorboards. The bottle of wine still gleamed on the table, untouched. And Grace, staring at it in the dim light, made herself a quiet promise. The day would come when she would no longer swallow the hurt. The day would come when her children would understand the true cost of taking love for granted. 2 days after Chloe left the children with her, Daniel arrived unannounced again. He barged into the farmhouse with the casual arrogance of someone who believed it was still his home, though he hadn't lived there in 20 years. Hey, Mom, he called, not waiting for an answer. Got any coffee? I've been up since 5. Grace, who was folding laundry at the table, set the shirts aside and filled the kettle. Of course, Daniel. Sit down. I'll make a pot. Daniel dropped into a chair, drumming his fingers impatiently. His eyes landed on the unopened bottle of wine still sitting on the shelf. You still haven't touched that? He asked, his tone sharp. Grace gave a tired smile. You know I can't drink, dear, but it's lovely to look at. Daniel scoffed. What a waste. That bottle was supposed to show people I care. When guests come over, you should offer it. That's how people know you've got class. Grace's heart sank. It wasn't really for me, was it? Daniel shrugged. You take things too personal, Mom. I spent good money on that gift. You should be grateful, not picking at the details. Later that evening, Chloe called again. Her voice was brisk, impatient. Mom, did Daniel stop by? He said you were giving him grief about the wine. Grace hesitated. I didn't mean grief, Chloe. I only said, honestly, Mom. Chloe cut her off. You've always had a way of making us feel like we can never please you. Daniel and I were just talking about it. Nothing we do is enough for you. Grace clutched the phone tighter. All I've ever wanted was for you to be happy. I never... But Chloe didn't let her finish. Then show it! Stop criticizing. Stop acting like a martyr. We're doing the best we can. The line went dead, leaving Grace staring at the silence. A week later, Grace attended Sunday service at the little white church in town. She wore her best dress, one she had mended more times than she could count. Afterward, in the fellowship hall, she overheard whispers. Chloe says her mother's been difficult lately. Daniel told me she's always complaining, never satisfied. It's a shame, after all they do for her. Grace's hands trembled as she poured herself a cup of coffee. She turned her face away, hiding the tears pricking her eyes. They were rewriting her story in the eyes of others. She wasn't the mother who had worked herself to the bone, who had sacrificed everything she was, the ungrateful one, the complainer, the burden. That afternoon, Robert and Helen, her late husband's cousins, stopped by the farmhouse. They were well-meaning, though blunt. Grace, Helen said with a sigh. We heard you've been giving the kids trouble. They do so much for you. Maybe you should try being easier on them. Grace's throat closed. Is that what they're saying? Robert patted her shoulder. We know you mean well, but people talk. Maybe let the little things go. Grace forced a smile, though her heart ached. Of course, I'll try. When they left, she sat at the table staring at the bottle again. It seemed to mock her now, gleaming with every unspoken word her children had twisted. That night, Chloe arrived in person. Her children ran to Grace with hugs, but Chloe barely glanced at her. Mom, she began sharply, I heard you upset Aunt Helen at church. Why can't you just stop stirring things up? We're exhausted trying to keep people from thinking you're bitter. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I never said a word. I've only ever defended you both. Chloe shook her head. You always make yourself the victim. Daniel and I are done with the drama. You need to change, Mom. You need to be easier. Her words pierced deeper than knives. Grace stood quietly, letting Chloe speak, her face calm though her heart screamed. When Chloe left, slamming the door, Grace finally sat and whispered aloud, I have given everything, and still, it is never enough. In the quiet, she pulled open the drawer beside her bed, where her journal rested. She wrote by the dim lamplight. They call me ungrateful. They twist my words. They make me the villain. But I will not break. I know the truth of what I've given. And one day, they will know too. I am not weak. I am not blind. The day is coming when I will show them who I am. She closed the book, her hands steady. The bottle gleamed in the next room, untouched, a symbol of every slight, every betrayal. But Grace knew it would not be the end of her story. The next week brought no peace. On Monday morning, Daniel appeared again, stomping mud across the kitchen floor. He didn't bother with greetings, he never did. Instead, he pulled a crumpled envelope from his pocket and dropped it on the table. Mom, I need $300, right away. Grace looked up from her knitting, startled. Daniel, I don't have that kind of money lying around. He scowled. Don't lie to me. Dad left you this house. You've got savings. You just don't want to help. Grace's voice was calm but firm. The house isn't money, Daniel, and my savings are for medicine, for keeping the lights on. I can't just hand it out. His face darkened. So you'll let your own son struggle? You'd rather watch me drown than give me a hand? Grace's chest ached. I've helped you, Daniel, again and again, but this... He cut her off with a slam of his fist on the table. You've always favored Chloe. Always. I'm the one who's had to fight for everything, and you can't even give me a little help. Without another word, he stormed out, leaving the envelope on the table as if his demand would be filled whether she agreed or not. 2 days later, Chloe arrived with her children, her face tight with frustration. Mom, we need to talk, she said curtly after ushering the kids into the living room. Grace braced herself. What is it, dear? Daniel says you refuse to help him. He's furious, Mom, and honestly, I can't blame him. You sit in this house, living off what Dad left, while Daniel's out there struggling to make ends meet. Grace's lips trembled. I've given him money, Chloe, more times than I can count, but every time, it disappears. I can't keep bailing him out. Chloe folded her arms. Maybe if you weren't so stubborn, we wouldn't be in this mess. Daniel's your son. He deserves your support. You think sitting here, clinging to this old house, makes you noble? It just makes you selfish. The word struck Grace like a blow. Selfish. All those years of sacrifice. And now her own daughter branded her selfish. That Sunday, whispers swirled again at church. She refused to help Daniel. Poor boy. She hoards everything. Some mothers never know how to give enough. Grace walked out before service ended, unable to bear the stares. She had always been known as a kind woman, a giving neighbor. Now, thanks to her children, that reputation was crumbling. One evening, her neighbor Mrs. Carter stopped by with a pie. She set it on the table gently, her eyes kind but pitying. Grace, dear, I don't know what's happening between you and your children, but people are talking. They say you've been unkind. Grace's eyes welled. Unkind? All I've ever done is give. Mrs. Carter reached across the table, squeezing her hand. I believe you, but you must be careful. Words spread faster than truth. Grace nodded, swallowing her tears. That night, Daniel returned, drunk and angry. You think you can humiliate me, Mom? You think you can make me beg and then turn me away? He slurred. Grace rose slowly from her chair, her voice steady. Daniel, you need to leave. Right now. He sneered. This is my house as much as yours. Dad meant it for me, not you. Grace's hands shook, but she didn't back down. Your father left this house to me. That was his choice. Daniel's face twisted with rage. Then you'll regret it. Because one way or another, I'll get what's mine. He staggered out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. Grace sank back into her chair, her heart racing. Later, as the house grew still, she opened her journal. By lamplight, she wrote, They call me selfish. They call me bitter. They paint me as the villain while draining me dry. But I know the truth, and I still hold the power they've forgotten. Let them believe I am weak. Let them think I have nothing. One day, they will see. She closed the book, her hand steady despite the tremor in her chest. The bottle of wine still gleamed from the shelf, untouched. It had become a symbol now of their disregard, their carelessness, their belief that she was unworthy of true thought. Grace stared at it for a long time, then whispered to the empty room, The day is coming, and when it does, they'll learn what it means to break a mother's heart. By the middle of summer, Grace could no longer ignore the change in her children. The kindness that had once shown, even if faintly, was gone. In its place was calculation, resentment, and something darker, greed. It started small. Chloe mentioned, offhandedly, that it was silly for Grace to keep up the big farmhouse alone. You'd be better off selling it, Mom, Chloe said one afternoon while sipping iced tea. Move into a little apartment in town, closer to us. Then Daniel and I could help with things. Grace folded her hands in her lap. This house is my home, Chloe. It's where I raised you, where your father and I built our lives. Chloe's smile was thin. Yes, but it's too much for you. And it's not like you'll be around forever. Wouldn't it be nice to see it in good hands while you're still here? The words chilled Grace. Good hands. Chloe didn't mean her own, she meant theirs. That evening, Daniel arrived, as if on cue. He glanced around the house, his eyes lingering on the old oak furniture, the family china, the shelves lined with keepsakes. You know, Mom, he said casually, this place could fetch a fortune. With the land, the barn, the old orchard investors would pay good money. You'd never have to worry again, and neither would we. Grace's heart tightened. This isn't just property, Daniel. It's our family's history. Your father worked himself into the ground for this land. Daniel shrugged. And what good did it do him? He died working, while you sit here clinging to memories. It's time to let go, Mom. Give us a chance to use it. The next week, Grace overheard something that confirmed her fears. She had gone into town for groceries when she spotted Chloe and Daniel at the cafe, their heads bent close together. She slipped inside quietly, keeping to the shadows. She's stubborn, Daniel muttered, but she won't last forever. We just have to push a little harder. Chloe's voice was hushed but sharp. We can't wait that long. The bills will swallow us whole. We need her to agree now. Daniel slammed his fist softly on the table. Then we'll make her. If she won't listen, we'll find another way. Grace's knees trembled. She clutched the basket tighter and slipped out before they could see her. That night, she sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wine bottle, her journal open before her. They plot against me, my own children, whom I carried, fed, and clothed, whisper of taking what is mine. They see me as an obstacle, not a mother. They speak of making me bend. But they forget I have endured worse storms than this. They think me powerless. They will learn otherwise. She closed the journal, locking it in the drawer. Her resolve hardened. The following Sunday, Caroline, her niece, stopped by unexpectedly. She was young, warm-hearted, and had always been close to Grace. "Aunt Grace," she said hesitantly, "I don't want to upset you, but Daniel and Chloe have been talking. They've told people you're not well, that you're confused, forgetful." Grace's chest constricted. "Not well?" Caroline nodded, her eyes full of sorrow. "They're saying you can't handle living alone anymore, that maybe you should be moved somewhere else." Grace's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. "So that's their plan, to paint me weak, to strip me of dignity before they strip me of home." Caroline grasped her hands. "Don't let them. You're stronger than they know." The next day, Chloe arrived with a folder of papers. She laid them on the table with forced cheer. "Mom, we've been thinking about your future. We found a wonderful retirement home. Safe, comfortable, staff to take care of everything. All you'd have to do is sign here. The house would be sold, and the money would go into a fund for your care." Grace looked at the papers, then at her daughter's eager face. "And whose name is on that account, Chloe?" Chloe flushed. "Well, Daniel and I, of course, to manage things. For your sake." Grace's voice was quiet but firm. "Number." Chloe's eyes narrowed. "Mom, don't be unreasonable. This is for your own good." Grace stood, her frail frame somehow towering. "You may fool others with your smiles, Chloe, but you will not fool me. I will not be pushed out of my home, not while breath is in my body." Chloe's expression hardened into a scowl. She shoved the papers back into her bag. "You're making a mistake. One day, you'll regret not trusting us." She left without another word, the door slamming behind her. Grace sat back down slowly, her chest pounding, but her spirit unbroken. That night, she wrote again. "They try to move me like a pawn, but I am no pawn. I am the queen on this board, and they do not yet see it. The day will come when their betrayal will stand exposed, and the world will know the truth. Until then, I wait, patient, silent, strong." The bottle gleamed in the corner, untouched, a reminder that their cruelty was not new, only growing bolder. Grace whispered into the quiet house, "You will not break me. Not now. Not ever." The following week, Grace received a letter in the mail. At first, she thought it might be from an old friend, but when she opened it, her hands shook. It was a notice from the county clerk's office. Her children had filed a petition questioning her ability to manage her own affairs. Grace sank into a chair, the paper fluttering from her hands. "They're trying to declare me unfit," she whispered, her chest tightening. The petition claimed she was forgetful, careless, and unable to make responsible decisions. It requested that Daniel and Chloe be granted power of attorney over her finances and property. Her children were no longer whispering. They were moving to take everything from her. That evening, Daniel arrived, smug and unrepentant. "So, you got the letter," he said, tossing his jacket onto the chair. Grace's eyes brimmed. "How could you do this to me, Daniel? After everything I've given—" He cut her off, his tone sharp. "You brought it on yourself. If you'd just signed the papers and let us handle things, we wouldn't have had to do this. But you're too stubborn, too blind." Grace's voice quivered. "Blind? To what?" "To reality," Daniel snapped. "You're old, Mom. You're weak. You're clinging to this house like it means something. But it's just land. Just walls. You should have stepped aside years ago." Her heart broke at his words. She whispered, "This house is the last piece of your father, of us. Does that mean nothing to you?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "It means money, and I'm not letting you waste it." He stormed out, leaving her trembling in the chair. The next day, Chloe came by, her voice honeyed but her eyes cold. Mom, please don't make this harder. Daniel and I are only doing what's best. You can't keep up with the bills, the maintenance, the loneliness. We're trying to protect you. Grace's voice was quiet. Protect me, or profit from me. Chloe's expression flickered, but she pressed on. Don't talk like that. You sound paranoid. People will think you've lost your mind. Grace's eyes filled with tears. People already think it, because you've told them. Chloe's lips tightened. If you'd just cooperate, we wouldn't have to. Later that week, Grace overheard more gossip in town. She's slipping, poor thing. Chloe says she forgets the simplest things. Daniel told me she left the stove on last month, nearly burned the place down. Maybe it's better if they take over, for her safety. Grace walked past them, her head high, though her hands shook. None of it was true. She hadn't left the stove on. She wasn't losing her memory. But her children's lies were being woven into the fabric of her reputation. One evening, Caroline visited again. She found Grace sitting at the table, the petition lying open before her. Aunt Grace, Caroline whispered, they can't do this. You're not unfit. You're sharper than both of them put together. Grace smiled weakly. But they have the louder voices. The world believes the ones who shout, not the ones who whisper. Caroline gripped her hand. Then shout with me. Don't let them steal your voice. Grace's eyes glistened. One day, Caroline, when the time is right, I will. For now, I endure. That weekend, Chloe brought her children again. Grace welcomed them with open arms, fixing them cookies and reading them stories. For a few hours, laughter filled the house again. But when Chloe returned to fetch them, her words were cruel. You're too indulgent, Mom. The kids come back spoiled every time. Honestly, you're more of a burden than a help. Grace's chest tightened. They're only children, Chloe. They deserve joy. Chloe rolled her eyes. What they deserve is discipline, something you never gave us. Maybe that's why Daniel and I struggle, because you coddled us. Grace's heart clenched at the injustice. Coddled! I worked myself to the bone to give you both a better life. Chloe's voice was icy. And look where that got us. Don't expect gratitude, Mom. You'll never get it. She left with the children, her words lingering like poison in the air. That night, Grace sat by the fire, the petition still on the table. She took up her journal, her hand steady despite the storm raging inside. They twist the story, turning me from mother into burden, from caretaker into fool. They think their lies will bury me. But I know the truth, and I keep it safe. One day, when they stand before me with their schemes, I will open the box they cannot touch, and the truth will burn brighter than their lies. She closed the journal, slipping it into the drawer with a faint smile. The wine bottle gleamed on the shelf, a reminder of how it all began. Grace whispered into the quiet night. The day will come, my children, and when it does, you will remember who I am. The petition hearing was still weeks away, but Daniel and Chloe behaved as though victory were already theirs. On a Tuesday morning, Daniel barged into the farmhouse again, this time with a clipboard in hand. Mom, sign these papers, he demanded, dropping them on the kitchen table. Grace set aside the quilt she was mending. What are they? Bank authorizations, Daniel said casually, though his eyes gleamed. It'll make things easier for you. I'll take care of the bills, the taxes. You won't have to worry about a thing. Grace's gaze hardened. And what if I don't want to sign? Daniel's smile vanished. Then you'll regret it. The court will give me the authority anyway. This way's cleaner. Grace's hands trembled, but her voice was calm. Your father worked too hard for me to hand it away with a pen. I will not sign. Daniel's face reddened with rage. He snatched the papers and stormed out, muttering under his breath, "Stubborn old fool." That evening, Chloe arrived. She carried herself with the confidence of someone convinced she was in the right. Mom, she began, Daniel told me you refused to sign the papers. Why are you making this harder than it has to be? Do you really want to drag us through a courtroom? It'll embarrass all of us. Grace's heart ached. Chloe, don't you see? This isn't love. This is taking. This is stripping me of everything I've built. Chloe's tone sharpened. You're being dramatic. You act like a victim, but you're the one causing problems. People are already talking. They think you're unstable. If you'd just cooperate, no one would need to know. Grace stood, her frail body trembling but her spirit unbowed. I will not be silenced by gossip. I know who I am. Chloe glared at her, then turned on her heel and left, slamming the door. The following Sunday, humiliation came in full force. Grace walked into the church fellowship hall, her shoulders straight despite the whispers she heard behind her. Daniel and Chloe were already there, speaking with Robert and Helen, their voices raised just enough to carry. She's forgetting things all the time, Chloe said with a dramatic sigh. Left the door unlocked for hours, Daniel added. Anyone could have walked in. She refuses to let us help. Chloe continued, shaking her head. It's heartbreaking, really. Several heads turned toward Grace, eyes filled with pity. Some nodded sympathetically at Chloe and Daniel, as though they were the dutiful children burdened with an impossible task. Grace's cheeks burned. She wanted to shout the truth that it was all lies, that she was sharper than either of them, but her voice caught in her throat. Instead, she walked quietly to a seat in the corner, folding her hands tightly in her lap as the whispers grew louder. After the service, Mrs. Carter approached, her eyes sorrowful. Grace, dear, if you ever need help, real help, you can tell me. We all want what's best for you. Grace forced a smile, though tears burned in her eyes. Thank you, but I'm fine. But she wasn't fine. She was humiliated, betrayed in the very place she had once felt safe. That evening, Caroline came to the farmhouse. She found Grace sitting on the porch, her eyes fixed on the horizon, the bottle of wine glinting in the window behind her. Aunt Grace, Caroline said gently, I heard what happened today. I'm so sorry. They shouldn't have done that to you. Grace's voice was steady, though her eyes glistened. They want the world to believe I'm weak. They want to bury me under lies. So their greed looks like mercy. Caroline sat beside her. Then fight, Aunt Grace. Speak louder. Show them you're not what they say. Grace placed her hand over Caroline's one self. I will, but not yet. Sometimes silence is the stronger weapon. Let them think I am beaten. The day will come when the truth will rise, and their lies will collapse under its weight. Caroline nodded, her faith in Grace unshaken. That night, Grace opened her journal again. They humiliate me in public, strip me of dignity in whispers and smiles. But I endure. I record. I remember. Every word, every lie, every betrayal. I hold in my hands like kindling, and when the fire comes, it will consume their falsehoods. They believe I am powerless, but I am the storm they do not see coming. She closed the book with firm hands and placed it back in the drawer. The farmhouse creaked in the wind, but Grace's heart was steady. Later, as she prepared for bed, she paused by the bottle of wine. She touched the ribbon still tied around its neck. A bitter smile crossed her face. The gift that was never mine. Perhaps it will be the last straw when all is revealed. She turned off the lamp, the bottle gleaming faintly in the moonlight, a symbol of insult, a reminder of betrayal, and a seed of the storm yet to come. The tension in the Miller family thickened with every passing day. Grace moved through the farmhouse like a shadow sweeping, tending her small garden, folding clothes left behind by Chloe's children, but her spirit was heavy. The petition hearing loomed, and Daniel and Chloe grew bolder, circling her like vultures around a wounded bird. One Friday morning, Grace walked to the post office and found her bank statement waiting. When she opened it at the kitchen table, her blood ran cold. Several withdrawals had been made, large ones that she hadn't authorized. She hurried to the bank, trembling as she waited in line. When she finally reached the counter, she slid the paper across to the clerk. There must be a mistake, she said. These aren't my withdrawals. The clerk frowned, then leaned closer. Mrs. Miller, your son Daniel came in with signed authorization. He said you'd given him permission. Grace's heart pounded. That's a lie. I never signed anything. The clerk shifted uneasily. Well, the signatures matched. If you'd like, you can file a dispute, but it'll take weeks. Grace left the bank in a daze. Daniel hadn't even waited for the court hearing, he had already begun stealing from her. That evening, Daniel showed up at the farmhouse, reeking of whiskey, his grin wide and unapologetic. Mom, don't look so sour. I just borrowed a little. I'll pay it back. Grace's hands shook. You forged my name. You stole from me. Daniel's smile turned sharp. Don't use words like that. You're my mother. My blood. What's yours is mine. Always has been. Grace's voice trembled, but her eyes held his. No, Daniel. What's mine is mine, and you've forgotten what it means to respect your own mother. Daniel laughed bitterly. Respect? You never respected me. You always treated me like the disappointment. Well, guess what? I don't need your respect. I just need what I'm owed. He staggered out, leaving the smell of whiskey and rage hanging in the air. The next day, Chloe arrived. She didn't knock, she never did. Her tone was brisk, her words rehearsed. Mom, Daniel told me you made a scene at the bank. Why would you embarrass him like that? People are already talking about your instability. Grace drew in a sharp breath. Instability? Chloe, he stole from me. Chloe rolled her eyes. You make everything sound so dramatic. He didn't steal. He borrowed. He's your son. Why can't you support him without making it ugly? Grace's voice rose for the first time. Because he betrayed me! And you defend him as if betrayal were nothing. Chloe's face hardened. You know what, Mom? Maybe it's better if the court does step in. At least then Daniel and I can handle things without your constant interference. You should be grateful we care enough to take responsibility. Grace's chest ached. Grateful? For being robbed? For being lied about? Chloe's eyes were cold. Grateful for having children who are willing to carry your burden. You've had your time, Mom. It's ours now. She left, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. That night, Grace sat at the kitchen table with Caroline, who had come after hearing whispers in town. Aunt Grace, Caroline said softly, I know what they're saying. That you're losing your memory, that you're paranoid, even that you're dangerous to yourself. But I know it's not true. I see you. I believe you. Tears welled in Grace's eyes. They've stolen my name, Caroline. My dignity. Soon they'll steal everything. And all I have left is the truth I keep here. She tapped the drawer where her journal rested. Caroline leaned closer. Then hold on to it. Write everything. One day, it will save you. Grace nodded, her resolve hardening again. A few days later, the cruelty turned public once more. At the grocery store, Grace overheard Daniel speaking to a neighbor by the produce stand. His voice was loud enough to carry. Poor Mom. She's not herself anymore. Keeps accusing us of terrible things. We're just trying to take care of her, but she fights us every step. It breaks my heart. The neighbor clucked her tongue sympathetically. You're good children, Daniel. Not everyone would put up with that. Grace stood frozen by the canned goods aisle, her heart pounding. Her son's lies had become her reality in the eyes of others. That evening, she returned home to find the wine bottle knocked over on the shelf, the ribbon unraveling. It hadn't broken, but it lay there like an omen. Grace picked it up, her hands steady. She whispered to herself, This house still stands. I still stand, and I will not be erased. She placed the bottle back upright and sat with her journal once more. They have stolen my money. They have stolen my good name. They speak of me as though I am a shadow, a burden, a fool. But I remember. I endure. Every wound they give me becomes a stone in the foundation of truth. And when the moment comes, I will build a wall so high their lies cannot scale it. She closed the journal, her heart heavy but resolute. The farmhouse creaked in the night, but Grace did not tremble. She knew now the storm was coming, and she would be ready. The night of the town's summer festival should have been joyful. Families filled the square with music, laughter, and the smell of roasted corn and sweet pies. Grace hadn't planned to go, but Caroline insisted. Aunt Grace, you need to be seen, Caroline urged. Don't let their whispers define you. Show people you're still yourself. So Grace went, wearing her Sunday best and her warmest smile. For a time, it worked. Neighbors greeted her. Some even apologized for believing the gossip. Grace felt a flicker of hope. But then Daniel and Chloe arrived. They walked straight to the gazebo where townsfolk gathered, speaking loudly so all could hear. It's been so hard, Chloe said, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Mom refuses to take her medication. She forgets where she is, wanders at night. We're terrified she'll hurt herself. Daniel nodded solemnly. We've tried everything, but she won't listen. We're just praying the court grants us guardianship before something awful happens. Gasps rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to Grace, standing near the pie stall, her face pale as ash. Her heart pounded. That's not true, she cried, her voice trembling. I take no medication. I don't wander. I'm as sound as any of you. But the murmurs spread, pitying looks cast her way. To them, she sounded desperate, a frail old woman denying her decline. Daniel shook his head sadly, playing the part of the dutiful son. See, she doesn't even realize. Grace fled the festival, tears burning her cheeks. Back at the farmhouse, she collapsed into her chair, sobs racking her body. The wine bottle gleamed from the shelf, its ribbon loose, mocking her like the whispers. For the first time in years, Grace cried not silently, but with a raw, aching voice. Samuel, she whispered into the night. I tried. I tried to hold them together, to love them enough for both of us. But they hate me. Our children hate me. The farmhouse walls seemed to echo her grief. The next morning Daniel arrived, smug as ever. You embarrassed us last night, he said coldly, screaming in front of everyone like that. Now they all know you've lost it. Grace's eyes were red but steady. You humiliated me. You lied. Daniel smirked. Truth. Lie, it doesn't matter. What people believe is what matters. And they believe us. Grace's voice trembled. How could you? I am your mother. His grin faded into a snarl. You stopped being my mother the day you chose Chloe over me, the day you let me struggle while you handed her everything. Grace's breath caught. I never favored her. I gave you both all I had. Daniel leaned close, his eyes burning. Then it wasn't enough. He stormed out, leaving the house heavy with his rage. Later that day, Chloe came with her children. She sent them to play in the yard while she cornered Grace in the kitchen. Mom, last night was unacceptable. Do you understand? You're making us look like villains when all we've done is care for you. Grace's voice cracked. Care for me? By stealing from me? By poisoning my name? Chloe's face hardened. You call it stealing. I call it protecting our future. You don't need this house. You don't need money. You need us. And the sooner you realize that, the better. Grace's hands shook as she clutched the counter. You've broken my heart, Chloe. I would have given you everything freely, if only you had asked with love. Chloe's lips tightened. Love doesn't pay bills, Mom. Wake up. That night, Caroline returned to find Grace sitting silently in the dark, the journal open in her lap. Aunt Grace? Caroline whispered. Grace looked up, her eyes weary but burning with something new resolve. They've destroyed my name. They've stolen my money. They humiliate me in public, and still they want more. But Caroline, Grace's voice steadied, I have something they cannot touch. Something I've kept hidden all these years. Caroline leaned closer. What is it? Grace closed the journal, her hand firm. The truth. Proof of who I am, what I've done, what I've sacrificed. And when the time comes, I'll reveal it. Not yet, but soon. Their lies will choke them when the truth is spoken. Caroline nodded, tears glistening. I'll stand by you, Aunt Grace, whatever comes. Grace managed a faint smile. Then I won't face this storm alone. Later that night, as the farmhouse settled into silence, Grace placed the wine bottle in the center of the table. It had begun as a careless insult, but now it was a symbol of everything. Their thoughtlessness, their cruelty, their greed. She whispered to herself, "This bottle will be the spark. When the time is right, it will all begin." The lamp flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Grace sat tall in her chair, no longer broken. The storm was near. The farmhouse felt heavier with each passing day, as though the walls themselves carried the weight of betrayal. Grace woke each morning with a knot in her chest, bracing for what her children might do next. And then it came. On a Wednesday afternoon, Daniel and Chloe arrived together, their rare unity an omen in itself. They didn't bother with pleasantries. They marched straight into the kitchen like soldiers on a mission. Chloe laid a stack of papers on the table. "Mom, this has gone on long enough. We're done waiting for the court. Sign these." Grace glanced at the papers, her stomach twisting. "What are they?" "Transfer documents," Daniel said flatly. "The house, the land, the accounts. It all comes to us now. You'll move into a retirement home where you'll be cared for properly." Grace's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. "Number." Daniel's eyes flashed with anger. "Don't be stupid, Mom. This is happening with or without your signature. We're giving you the chance to make it easy." Chloe leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Do you want to drag this family through scandal, through lawyers and judges? People already think you've lost it. Don't make it worse." Grace's heart pounded. "You've lied about me. You've stolen from me. And now you want to throw me out of my home? Is this what you call love?" Daniel sneered. "Love doesn't matter. Survival does. And you've held on long enough." For a long moment, silence filled the kitchen. Only the clock ticked on the wall. Grace's eyes flickered to the wine bottle gleaming on the shelf. A bitter smile touched her lips. "Do you know what that bottle means to me?" she asked softly. Chloe frowned. "What are you talking about?" "That bottle," Grace continued, her voice steady now, "is the reminder of what you've become. A gift without thought, a gesture without love. That bottle told me everything I needed to know about the children I raised." Daniel scoffed. "You're rambling." Grace's eyes burned with quiet fire. "No, Daniel. I am remembering. And when the time comes, so will everyone else." She pushed the papers back across the table. "Take them and leave. You will not have this house. Not today. Not ever." Chloe's face twisted with fury. "You're making a mistake. We're your children. We're entitled to this." Grace's voice rang clear. "Number, you are entitled to my love, and you've thrown it away." Daniel slammed his fist on the table so hard the papers scattered. "You'll regret this, old woman. When you're sitting in that home with nothing, you'll wish you'd given us what we asked." Grace met his glare without flinching. Better nothing with dignity than everything with betrayal. For a moment, Daniel looked as though he might strike her, but Chloe grabbed his arm. "Not here," she hissed. "Not now." They gathered the papers and stormed out, slamming the door so violently the frame rattled. Grace sank into her chair, her body trembling, but her spirit unbroken. That evening, Caroline returned after hearing the commotion. Grace told her everything, her voice steady despite the fear that lingered in her chest. "They came for it all today," she said. "The house, the land, the savings. They want to erase me completely." Caroline's eyes widened. "Aunt Grace, this has gone too far. You can't fight them alone anymore." Grace reached across the table, taking Caroline's hand. "I am not alone. I have the truth. And soon the world will hear it." Caroline leaned closer, her voice firm. "Then promise me you'll let me stand with you." Whatever storm is coming, we'll face it together. Grace smiled faintly. You are the only one who stood by me without asking for something in return. That is love, Caroline. That is family. That night, Grace wrote in her journal, Today, they showed their hands. They no longer hide behind lies or gossip. They came for me openly, with greed blazing in their eyes. But I did not yield. I will not yield. The time is near the moment when their masks will fall, and the truth will strike like lightning. I have carried this burden in silence long enough. Soon the storm will break. She closed the journal and placed it back in the drawer. Then she stood, lifting the wine bottle from the shelf. She held it in her hands for a long while, staring at the ribbon, at the glass that had gleamed through so many dark nights. This bottle will be the key, she whispered. When I reveal what I have kept hidden, they will remember this moment. And they will regret everything. She set it back down, upright and shining in the lamplight, like a sentinel waiting for the battle to come. The farmhouse was silent, but inside Grace's heart, a storm raged, a storm ready to break. And when it did, nothing in the Miller family would ever be the same again. The morning of the petition hearing arrived gray and heavy, clouds sagging low over the town. Grace dressed with deliberate care her best navy dress, pearls Samuel had given her long ago and a shawl Caroline had knitted. She brushed her silver hair until it gleamed, then stood before the mirror. You will not see a broken woman, she whispered to her reflection. You will see strength. Caroline arrived early to drive her to the courthouse. She gasped when she saw Grace. Aunt Grace, you look powerful. Grace gave a faint smile. That is the truth they cannot hide with their lies. At the courthouse, the room filled quickly. Neighbors, relatives, curious townsfolk. Daniel and Chloe sat at the front with their lawyer, whispering confidently, smirking whenever eyes turned their way. Grace sat quietly beside Caroline, her hands folded in her lap, her journal tucked safely in her purse. When the judge entered and the proceedings began, Daniel's lawyer rose first. Your Honor, he began, this case is a tragic but familiar one. An elderly woman, once strong, now in decline. My clients, her devoted children, have tried everything to care for her. But Mrs. Miller refuses their help. She forgets bills, leaves the stove on, accuses her family of theft. She is no longer capable of managing her affairs. We ask the court to grant guardianship to her children for her safety. Gasps of sympathy rippled through the crowd. Daniel lowered his head solemnly. Chloe dabbed her eyes. Then the judge turned to Grace. Mrs. Miller, do you have anything to say? Grace rose slowly, leaning on the table for balance, but her voice was clear and strong. Yes, Your Honor, I do. She looked directly at Daniel and Chloe. My children say I am forgetful, that I am weak, that I am a burden, but I remember everything. She opened her purse and drew out her journal. She held it high for all to see. For years, I have written the truth. Every insult, every demand, every betrayal. I wrote when Daniel came drunk to my door and called me a fool. I wrote when Chloe told me I was selfish for holding on to my home. I wrote when they forged my name at the bank, when they spread lies about me at church, when they told the world I had lost my mind. She opened the journal and began to read aloud. Her words filled the courtroom. He slammed his fist on the table and called me stubborn old fool. She said I coddled them, that I would never get gratitude. They plotted at the cafe to force me into a home. Every page she turned was another stone laid bare, another truth pulled from the shadows. Murmurs spread across the room as faces turned from sympathy for Daniel and Chloe to shock, then disgust. Daniel leapt to his feet, his face red. She's making it up! She's crazy! Grace's voice cut through his shouting. Crazy? Then how do I have this? She reached into her purse again and drew out a folded document. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes gleamed with fire. This, she said, handing it to the judge, is the will your father signed before he died. The original, not the copy Daniel tried to alter. In it, he left everything, the house, the land, the savings solely to me, with instructions that it should pass to my choosing when I am gone, not automatically to Daniel, not automatically to Chloe, to the one who has shown true love and loyalty. A collective gasp swept the courtroom. Grace lifted her chin. I kept it hidden, waiting for the day my children would reveal their hearts. And reveal them, they have. Chloe's face went pale. Mom, you can't mean… I mean exactly what I say, Grace said, her voice shaking with fury. I gave you everything a mother could give, my time, my health, my love, and you gave me cruelty, you gave me greed, you gave me betrayal, and now the world knows it. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, I am not senile. I am not unstable. I am a mother betrayed by her own blood. But I will not be erased. Not while I can still speak the truth. The judge studied the journal, the will, and then the faces of Daniel and Chloe. Their lawyer stammered, but the tide had turned. The whispers in the gallery were no longer sympathetic. They were condemning. Shameful, someone muttered. To treat their own mother that way, another whispered. They'll regret this day. Daniel's fists clenched, his jaw tight with rage. Chloe buried her face in her hands. But Grace stood tall, her shoulders squared. For the first time in months, she felt the weight lift. She had spoken. She had been heard. That evening, back at the farmhouse, Grace set the journal on the table beside the gleaming wine bottle. Caroline sat across from her, eyes shining with pride. Aunt Grace, she whispered, you were magnificent. Grace smiled faintly. The storm has broken, but it is not over yet. They will not let go so easily. Caroline nodded. Then we'll be ready. Grace touched the wine bottle gently. This insult began the fire in me. And now, it will remind me always, never again will I be silent in the face of betrayal. The bottle gleamed in the lamplight, a sentinel watching over a mother who had finally found her voice. The courthouse victory gave Grace strength, but it also stoked a dangerous fire in Daniel and Chloe. For the first time in their lives, the town looked at them not with admiration, but with disgust. Neighbors turned away, church friends whispered, and their reputations crumbled. Daniel, furious and humiliated, stormed into the farmhouse 2 nights later, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. You think you've won, don't you? He spat. Parading that stupid journal around, making us look like villains. Grace sat calmly at the table, her hands folded. I didn't make you look like villains, Daniel. You did that yourselves. His face flushed red. Do you know what people are saying? That we're leeches, that we're thieves. Do you have any idea what that does to me? Grace's eyes were steady. It does to you what you did to me, stripped you of dignity. Now you know how it feels. Daniel's hand twitched as though he might strike her, but Grace didn't flinch. Her calmness was a shield stronger than stone. The next day, Chloe came, her expression cold and tight. She didn't bring her children this time. Mom, we need to talk, she said, her voice trembling with controlled anger. Grace looked up from her knitting. Yes, Chloe. Let's talk. Chloe paced the room. Do you realize what you've done? You've ruined us. Daniel's business partners pulled out. My friends won't even look at me. Everyone thinks we're monsters because of you. Grace's voice was soft, but each word struck like a hammer. Not because of me, Chloe. Because of what you did. Oh, Chloe's composure cracked. We were desperate. Daniel's drowning in debt, and I. She stopped, biting her lip. Grace tilted her head. And you what, Chloe? Chloe's eyes glistened with tears. And I was tired of struggling. I thought if we had the house, the land, the money, maybe things would finally be easy. Maybe I could finally breathe. Grace's heart ached, but she did not waver. At the cost of your mother's life? My dignity? Chloe, Love does not steal. Love does not lie. Chloe turned away, hiding her face. That evening, both Daniel and Chloe returned together, their unity restored by shared bitterness. You humiliated us, Daniel growled. But this isn't over. You can't stop us forever. You're old, Mom. One day, you won't be here to wave that journal around. And when that day comes, all of this will be ours anyway. Grace rose slowly, her shawl falling from her shoulders like wings. Her voice, when it came, was steady and commanding. You're wrong, Daniel. When that day comes, it will not be yours. Because I will decide who inherits this home. And after what you've done, it will never be you. Chloe gasped. What are you saying? Grace's eyes blazed. I am saying that I have already chosen. And it is not you. Silence fell like a hammer. Daniel's face contorted with rage. Chloe's lips trembled. Chosen? Daniel spat. You think you can cut us out? We're your children. Grace's voice rang clear. You were my children. But you chose greed over love, betrayal over loyalty. You chose to make me your enemy, and so you will reap what you have sown. Chloe clutched her chest, whispering, You wouldn't. Grace's gaze softened, though her tone remained firm. I would, because love is not about blood. Love is about loyalty. And when I am gone, everything I leave will go to the one who has shown it. Her eyes flicked toward Caroline, who stood quietly in the doorway, having heard it all. Daniel followed Grace's gaze and let out a bitter laugh. Her? That little saint of a niece? You'd give it all to her? Grace's voice was firm. Yes, because she stood by me when you turned against me. She gave when you only took. She loved when you only betrayed. Daniel's fists clenched. You'll regret this, old woman. I swear it. Grace stepped closer, her frail body trembling but unyielding. No, Daniel, you will regret it. For the rest of your days, you will remember this moment, the day your mother cut you off, not because she didn't love you, but because you refused to love her in return. Daniel stormed out, his footsteps pounding the porch. Chloe lingered, tears streaming down her face. Mom, she whispered, please, give us another chance. Grace's eyes softened. You had countless chances, Chloe, and each time you chose greed. I pray one day you'll remember what it means to be a daughter, but until then, the choice is made. Chloe's sobs filled the room as she fled into the night. Grace sank back into her chair, her hands shaking, but her spirit unbroken. Caroline rushed to her side, clutching her hand. Aunt Grace, she whispered, you were incredible. Grace smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. No, child. I was simply a mother who had finally had enough. She glanced at the wine bottle on the shelf, still gleaming faintly in the lamplight. They gave me thoughtlessness as a gift, and in return, I gave them truth. Perhaps that is the greater gift, the one they will never forget. That night, she wrote in her journal once more. Tonight, I cut the cord. They are no longer my heirs. My heart is heavy, but it is free. They will hate me, but they will also remember. And perhaps, in that memory, they will one day learn what love truly means. She closed the journal, her hand steady. The farmhouse creaked, the wind whispered, but Grace felt peace for the first time in months. The storm was not over, but she had faced its fiercest winds, and she still stood. For a few days, the farmhouse was quiet. Grace tended her roses, baked bread, and wrote in her journal. She felt lighter, though her heart still carried sorrow. The town now looked at her with respect again, thanks to her courage in court. But Daniel and Chloe were not finished. Humiliation burned too deep, and greed gnawed at them like a hunger that could not be satisfied. On a stormy Friday night, the farmhouse door burst open without warning. Daniel stumbled in, soaked with rain, his eyes wild. Chloe followed close behind, pale and trembling. Grace stood from her chair, her knitting falling to the floor. What is the meaning of this? Daniel's voice was hoarse, desperate. You can't cut us out, Mom. You can't. We're your blood, your children. You don't get to choose some niece over us. Grace's heart clenched. You had your chance, Daniel. Both of you did. And you chose betrayal. Chloe stepped forward, her hands shaking. Please, Mom. We've lost everything, friends, money, respect. You're all we have left. Don't leave us with nothing. Grace's voice trembled but held firm. You left yourselves with nothing. My hands are clean. Daniel's rage boiled over. He grabbed the wine bottle from the shelf, holding it high. You keep this stupid thing like it means something! Is this all it takes to break you? Grace's eyes flashed. Put it down, Daniel. He sneered. Or what? You'll write about it in your precious journal? Maybe I'll smash it, just to prove you're powerless. Caroline, who had been upstairs, came rushing down the stairs, her eyes wide. Stop! Put it down! Daniel whirled toward her. Stay out of this! This isn't your family! Caroline's voice rang clear. No, Daniel, this is my family. Because family means loyalty. Something you forgot. Grace stepped forward, her frail body trembling but unafraid. Daniel, listen to me. That bottle is not just glass and wine. It is the symbol of what you gave me, thoughtlessness. It is the insult that sparked the truth. Every lie you told, every theft, every betrayal began with that bottle. Smash it if you must, but you'll never smash the truth. Daniel froze, his arm shaking, the bottle trembling in his hand. His jaw worked furiously, torn between rage and shame. Chloe reached out, her voice breaking. Daniel, stop. Please, don't make it worse. For the first time, Daniel's eyes flickered with doubt. His arm lowered slowly, the bottle clutched tight but no longer threatening. Grace's voice softened. My son, I loved you more than life. I gave everything for you. But you chose to see me as an obstacle, not a mother. Do you not see how far you've fallen? You stand in your father's house, threatening the woman who bore you. Is this who you wanted to become? Daniel's eyes filled with tears, though his jaw remained clenched. Chloe sobbed quietly, her hands covering her face. Grace stepped closer, her voice steady, her presence commanding. I will not give you my home. I will not give you my money. But I will give you one last chance, not as heirs, but as children. Turn from this path. Choose love over greed. That is all I can offer. The storm raged outside, lightning flashing through the windows. Silence fell inside, broken only by the pounding of rain. Daniel stared at the bottle, then at Grace. His hand loosened. The bottle slipped from his fingers, landing on the table with a dull thud, unbroken. He turned away, his shoulders heaving. I don't know who I am anymore. Chloe rushed to him, clutching his arm. Then maybe it's time we find out. Together. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, It's not too late if you choose differently. Daniel and Chloe lingered a moment longer, then left the farmhouse, the storm swallowing them as they disappeared into the night. Grace sank into her chair, her body shaking from the weight of it all. Caroline knelt beside her, holding her hands. Aunt Grace, she whispered, you were stronger than the storm. Grace smiled faintly, tears glistening on her cheeks. No, child. I was simply a mother, standing for what was right. She glanced at the wine bottle, still upright on the table, whole and shining despite the fury it had endured. A symbol of betrayal, she murmured, and now a symbol of survival. That night, she wrote in her journal for what felt like the final time. The storm has passed, though the clouds still linger. My children came with fury in their hearts, but they left with cracks in their armor. Perhaps one day, those cracks will let love back in. Until then, I hold my peace. I am Grace Miller. I am not broken. I am not erased. I am mother. I am keeper of truth, and I stand unbowed. She closed the book and placed it gently beside the wine bottle. Both now stood together, the truth and the insult, bound forever as reminders of the journey she had walked. And though the night outside was dark, inside the farmhouse burned a steady, unshakable light. The storm had passed, leaving the earth washed clean. Sunlight broke through the clouds the next morning, spilling over the Miller farmhouse like a blessing. Grace awoke early, her body weary but her spirit lighter than it had been in months. She walked to the kitchen, brewed a pot of coffee, and sat at the table. The wine bottle stood there, still upright, unbroken. Beside it lay her journal. She touched both gently, as though acknowledging old companions. Caroline came downstairs, her hair tousled, her eyes tired but bright. She had stayed the night to keep Grace company. "How are you feeling?" Caroline asked softly. Grace smiled faintly. "Like the storm has taken something from me, but given something back as well. My children are gone, but my voice remains. And so does love because you are here." Caroline's eyes filled with tears. "You'll never be alone again, Aunt Grace. I promise." In town, word spread quickly about the showdown at the farmhouse. Some said Daniel had finally lost control, that he'd nearly harmed his mother. Others whispered that Chloe had been seen sobbing in the rain afterward. Whatever the truth, the story had shifted. No longer was Grace Miller the frail old woman slipping into confusion. She was the mother who had stood against her own children's betrayal, the woman who had spoken truth when lies surrounded her. Neighbors stopped by with pies, casseroles, and words of apology. "We should have trusted you," Mrs. Carter said, tears in her eyes. "We believed their lies. Please forgive us." Grace only smiled. "Forgiveness is easier than forgetting. I will remember, but I will not carry bitterness." Meanwhile, Daniel and Chloe retreated into silence. Daniel's debts caught up with him. His business folded within weeks. Chloe, ostracized by her friends, kept to her home, her once proud voice reduced to whispers. Yet Grace carried no triumph in their downfall. She sat by the fire one evening and told Caroline, "I never wanted revenge, only truth. What happens to them now is their own harvest. Seeds of greed never grow into blessings." Caroline nodded solemnly. "Do you think they'll ever change?" Grace's eyes glistened. "Perhaps. Sometimes hearts must break completely before they can heal. I can only hope that one day they will remember who they are and who I am." One quiet afternoon, Grace walked through the garden, her hands brushing over the roses Samuel had planted years ago. She paused by the tallest bush, blooming bright and red. "Samuel," she whispered into the breeze, "I stood as we once promised we would, strong, even when the storm came from within our own blood. I hope you are proud." A single petal drifted into her hand. She closed her fingers around it and smiled through her tears. That night, she opened her journal again, not to record betrayal, but to reflect. "My story is not one of defeat, though sorrow tried to write it so. It is the story of a mother's love, tested, battered, but never broken. Daniel and Chloe may wander far from me, but the door of forgiveness remains open. For love, once given, does not die. It waits, patient as the earth waits for spring." She closed the journal gently, then turned to Caroline. "Child," she said, "when I am gone, this will be yours. Keep it safe. Not as a record of pain, but as a reminder that truth must always be spoken, no matter the cost." Caroline took the journal with trembling hands. "I'll treasure it always, and I'll make sure your story lives on." Grace looked at the wine bottle, still gleaming in the lamplight. She chuckled softly. "Funny, isn't it? An insult turned into a monument. A thoughtless gift that became the symbol of my strength. I used to hate it. Now I see it for what it is, a reminder that even the smallest slight can awaken the fiercest resolve." Caroline smiled. "Then maybe we should never open it. Let it stand as it is." "Yes," Grace agreed. "Unopened, unbroken, a lesson sealed in glass." Weeks later, on a Sunday morning, Grace walked into church once more. The congregation turned, whispers rising, but this time they were whispers of admiration. There she is, still strong, a woman of courage. She spoke truth when no one else dared. Grace took her seat, her head high. For the first time in a long while, she felt peace wash over her. After the service, the pastor approached her. "Mrs. Miller, your strength has been a sermon in itself, more powerful than any words I could preach." Grace smiled gently. "Strength is not mine alone, Pastor. It is given to all who choose truth over fear." That evening, as the sun set over the farmhouse, Grace sat with Caroline on the porch. The sky burned orange and pink, the world quiet and whole. "You know, Aunt Grace," Caroline said softly, "you taught me something. Family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shares your heart." Grace squeezed her hand. "Yes, child, that is the lesson. Blood may betray, but love endures." The two women sat in silence, watching the horizon. The farmhouse stood tall, the wine bottle gleamed inside, and the journal waited to be passed on, a testament to resilience, truth, and the unshakable power of love. And though shadows gathered with the night in the heart of Grace Miller, there was only light. The days turned into weeks, and the Miller farmhouse settled into a calm rhythm once more. Though the echoes of betrayal still lingered in its halls, they no longer crushed Grace's spirit. Instead, they reminded her of the storm she had survived. Grace spent her mornings tending the garden, afternoons quilting by the window, and evenings sharing tea with Caroline. The air inside the home, once heavy with conflict, now hummed with quiet peace. One afternoon, Caroline found Grace sitting on the porch, the journal open on her lap. The pages fluttered in the breeze, worn and filled with years of ink. "Aunt Grace," Caroline said gently, "are you writing again?" Grace smiled. "Yes, but not as before. Once, these pages carried pain and betrayal. Now, I write of gratitude, for you, for the lessons I've learned, for the strength that grew from sorrow." Caroline sat beside her. "May I read it someday?" Grace placed her hand over Caroline's. "One day, child. When I am gone, it will be yours. And you will know not just my pain, but my love." News of Daniel and Chloe faded into murmurs. Daniel moved to another town, seeking work far from the whispers of shame. Chloe remained, quieter than before, often seen walking alone, her once proud head bowed. Grace heard of them, but they did not return. And though her heart ached with longing, Grace made peace. She told herself, "My door remains open, but they must walk through it with love, not greed." One evening, as the fire crackled low, Grace called Caroline into the parlor. On the table sat three objects: the journal, the pearls Samuel had given her, and the wine bottle. "Caroline," Grace said softly, "these are my treasures, not because of their worth, but because of what they mean. The pearls remind me of Samuel's love, steady, faithful, shining even in hardship. The journal holds the truth, every wound, every triumph, every lesson. And the bottle," she paused, her eyes lingering on the glass, "the bottle is the strange gift of betrayal. It taught me that even thoughtlessness can give birth to strength." Caroline's eyes glistened. "And you want me to keep them?" Grace nodded. "Yes, so that when I am gone, you will carry not just my story, but the lessons that came with it. That love must be chosen, that truth must be spoken, and that dignity must never be surrendered." Caroline reached forward, her hands trembling as she accepted them. "I'll protect them always, Aunt Grace, and I'll tell your story so no one forgets." That night, Grace sat by her window, gazing at the moonlight spilling across the fields. Her body was weary, but her heart was full. She whispered a prayer into the quiet night. "Thank you, Lord, for the strength to endure. Thank you for Caroline, who stood by me when others turned away. And thank you even for the sorrow, for it taught me the true meaning of love." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in many months, she slept peacefully. The following Sunday, Grace and Caroline walked into church together. The congregation rose, not out of pity, but out of respect. The pastor spoke of resilience, of truth, of the courage it takes to stand alone when the world turns against you. And though he never named her, every eye turned to Grace. Caroline whispered, "Aunt Grace, they see you now." Grace smiled faintly. "Yes, but more importantly, I see myself." In her final journal entry, written weeks later, Grace's words carried the weight of all she had endured and the hope she carried forward. Betrayal may come from those closest to us. Cruelty may strike from the very blood we gave life to. But love can still be found. If not in children, then in those who choose us freely. Family is not only who we are born to, but who stands by us when the storm comes. And when we speak truth, even if our voices tremble, we plant seeds that will grow long after we are gone. I am Grace Miller. I have been mother, wife, sister, friend. I have been betrayed, but not broken. I have been wounded, but not silenced. And I will be remembered not for the cruelty I endured, but for the love I chose. On a golden autumn morning, Grace and Caroline walked the fields together. The air was crisp, the leaves bright with fire. Grace paused, looking out at the farmhouse, standing proud against the horizon. "This house," she said softly, "isn't just wood and nails. It is memory. It is sacrifice. It is truth. One day, it will be yours, Caroline, and I pray you fill it with love so that it never again echoes with betrayal." Caroline squeezed her hand. "I will, Aunt Grace. I promise." And so the story of Grace Miller did not end in defeat, but in triumph. Not the triumph of wealth or revenge, but of truth, dignity, and love. The farmhouse stood, the journal was preserved, and the wine bottle remained unopened, a silent monument to the lesson that even the smallest insult can awaken the fiercest strength. And in the quiet heart of an aging mother, love endured. Forever.